Welcome to a team selection video for Matchday 9 in UCL Fantasy, so the first leg of the quarterfinals. And there's quite a lot to get through. Some injuries have popped up, some major ones for a lot of us anyway, who had this certain striker. And just goals, action all around with the international break ending. And here we are again, so it's good to have a little recap of things that have happened. I'm also going to be, speaking of recap, I'm going to be talking about how my team did in Matchday 8, and very, very happy with what happened. I can't really complain too much. I got 89 points, and I went up to 11,000, and to be honest, after... I keep on talking about it, but Matchday 4, which was a disastrous week for me, one of the worst I've had in this game, I was looking very bad. I was around 30k, which isn't a bad rank to be fair, but I just had a stinker of a week. But since Matchday 6, I've been doing well, and once again capping off Matchday 8 with yet another green arrow. And yeah, just the captaincy, it is kind of easier in the round of 16 to get it right. You have so many opportunities. You get up to basically four different captains, and you're bound to get one of them right, you'd think. And my second try, Haaland, he did it, and he got 22 points, so very happy with him. You look across the board, I mean, points all round. In my starting lineup, the only ones to blank really are Christian Romero and Llorente. And to be honest, if Coman actually started, maybe that would have reduced that number by 1. But overall, very happy. The City players came in very, very clutch for me. And yeah, I mean, all of them 7 points or above. That's incredible. And City have been very good in FPL too. We all know that. Joshua Kimmich didn't do too well in Matchday 7, but Matchday 8 he returned the favour and did very well. Chiesa scored in the first leg, and then the second leg he did even better with 2 goals. And great performance. It's a shame that he's out, because he's someone I would definitely recommend to all of you if he was still in the competition. And then, yeah, you look at the front line. Mbappe scored. It was a penalty, and PSG did get dominated that game, but they did enough to go through. And Lewandowski also scored. And I had a little maybe contemplation of changing the captaincy from Haaland to Lewandowski, but I just stuck with Haaland. I mean, 11 points. It's a good total. It's very risky to just change that. So that's how I ended up in the end, and everyone on my bench obviously blanked. And moving on to Matchday 9, which is what we're here for, I have made 5 changes, and yeah, maybe a bit premature. I tend to leave it to the last day, but all of these teams have played, and unless something happens in training, it should be fine. And I've already adjusted it depending on who plays last. So just a reminder for those of you who might be new to these videos and also to UCL Fantasy, if you have players playing on the Tuesday, then start them, and make sure that anyone on your bench is going to be playing on the Wednesday. Otherwise, they're not going to come on for you unless you have auto subs on and you kind of just let the game do it for you. But it's better to be in control of your team with manual substitutions. So, for example, just to demonstrate what I'm talking about, Bayern versus PSG and Porto versus Chelsea are the final games, and that happens on the Wednesday. And there's these little substitution windows that happen. That's why I have Marquinhos, Goretzka and Kimmich on the bench, who all play on that Wednesday. Hitz is a different story. He plays in the exact same game as Ederson, but obviously I'm going to be favouring Ederson over Hitz. But otherwise, if I had a keeper playing on the Wednesday, he'd just be on the bench there. And if Ederson blanked, I could also take him out and bring in Hitz. And that's what you want to do. You want to take out these players, and then you want to bring on these new ones, and it will give you more chance of getting those points that you want. But the captaincy is going to be pretty difficult. I'll talk about it a bit later. But first of all, I'm going to talk about my transfers. I made 5 transfers, and the first one is Goretzka. He came in, and he came in for Chiesa, basically. A decent replacement, I'd say. And to be honest with Goretzka, he scored at the weekend. He's got a bit of a goal-scoring run at the moment. He scored against Leipzig, to be exact, in a very crucial game. And now Bayern are 7 points top of the Bundesliga, I believe. And yeah, I think for his price, he offers great value. And you look at his points totals, they come from a variety of different sources. You know, he can get goals, he can get assists and ball recoveries. So with him, you're mainly expecting at least 5 points or above. So yeah, with Goretzka, I think he's a very good option. Of course, when you are making these transfers, one thing I will I'll stress very highly is try to also bear in mind what you think is going to happen. Which team do you back to go through? And with a team, or should I say a game like Bayern versus PSG, if Lewandowski if he was playing, I would back Bayern. but now with him being out, it kind of makes the tie 50-50. So that's why I would really recommend, just first of all, before you even think about which players you want to bring in, just think which teams do I think will go through, because it saves you a transfer in the end, whether it's going into the second leg or the first leg of the semi-finals when we get to that stage. Just something to bear in mind. Other transfers I did make include Rudiger coming in and Phillips. I know that sounds very weird, but he did get 10 points in his last game. He's got those ball recoveries. He's constantly starting now for Liverpool. You could also go for Kabak, but I ended up going with Phillips. And the kind of logic here as well is I do think Liverpool will go through, although it's going to be a very difficult game if Madrid can get those injured players back like Toni Kroos and Sergio Ramos, although it is quite unlikely. But he's 4.5 million. If he does get knocked out, I can just keep him on the bench and not worry too much about it. And that's kind of also the thinking with Hitz when I brought him in when making the team for the round of 16. So that's just the kind of things I was thinking about. And I got rid of Koundé. And yeah, I mean, who else did I get rid of? You know what, to be honest, I actually can't remember. But yeah, Koundé, he was basically a waste of space in the end and he did nothing. Happy to get rid of him. And then you look at my midfield as well. I got Diego Jota. Now, will I be captaining him? Not so sure, I'll be honest. But he has also come in. And yeah, with Jota, did very well at the weekend against Arsenal. And he's someone on FPL as well that I'm thinking of bringing in. And I've been talking about wildcard and stuff like that for Game Week 31 for a long time. And I'll be making a video on that as well as the usual team selection for FPL. And Diego Jota is going to be one of those who feature. And he's just a class player at the moment. He's doing very well. And for his price, there's not much better. So he could do very well. And Neymar has come in for Lewandowski. That is the Lewandowski replacement. You could go for a Werner or a Benzema. But I looked down the list of strikers and I'll be honest, I'm not really captivated by everyone. Or by anyone, should I say. Because you have maybe the Porto strikers like Taremi and Marega. But I don't back them to go through. Then you look at Werner, he's very wasteful. You look at Benzema, to be fair, he's a good option. But that game as well, Liverpool-Madrid, is a bit 50-50. And I am kind of backing Liverpool a bit more. So the way I analyse my team right now is PSG or Bayern, one of them is going to go out. So that's 3 players gone from my team. So that's 3 transfers to make. And then I look across the board. Obviously, if City go out, that's a disaster for me. I've already got 4 of their players. And to be honest, I'm not going to be looking to add any more. That would just make it even more complicated for now. I would expect Dortmund to get knocked out. So Haaland and Hitz, although I could just keep Hitz as the second keeper. He's just going to be on the bench. So that's 4 players that I expect to go out. Now with Liverpool, it is still 50-50, but I would expect them to go through. And Chelsea-Porto. Porto are capable of an upset, but you would expect Chelsea to go through. So yeah, anywhere between 4 to 6, 7 players I would expect to be eliminated from my team, and the rest you would suspect will go through. But obviously a lot of that depends on what happens with Manchester City, so I'm going to keep a close eye on that. But yeah, that's kind of the thinking when you get deeper into the competition. You have to think about which teams you think are going to go through. Now, in terms of the captaincy, I'll be honest, it's not like the round of 16 where I'll just tell you, lot, don't worry, I'll list the players. It's so obvious. The Haaland on one day, and if not Lewandowski in the other. And there's just so many options. Mbappe's in another. This time it is a bit more tricky. You've only got 2 opportunities. And you look at Real Madrid versus Liverpool. The standout for me is Diego Jota. But maybe, I know it might sound a bit weird, but if you have a Trent Alexander-Arnold or a Robertson or a Phillips, someone with a lot of ball recoveries, they could be a very good captaincy, a bit of a differential as well. And to be honest, if Haaland was facing anyone other than City, he'd definitely be my captain, no-brainer, but not so sure about him returning. Dortmund also don't have Jadon Sancho, so that's going to be a big miss. But I think I'm going to go for either Jota or Erling Haaland. Not too sure yet about who's going to be my captain on the first day. And if they were to blank during the substitution window, not only will I be making subs, I'll also be potentially changing my captain. And it would have been Lewandowski, the no-brainer captain, but he is injured. He's out of my team now. And I'm actually thinking of captaining either Neymar or Mbappe. Although, if I'm honest, I'm not too sure what's going to happen in that game. I would still suspect Bayern will win the game, but maybe PSG have a goal or two in them, which will be very crucial considering the away goals rule. I wouldn't be bold or tempted enough to captain Rudiger, for example, or any Porto player if I did have them. Sergio Oliveira was someone I was actually thinking of very strongly for my team, but he is suspended for the first leg, so bear that in mind for any of you who do have him or who wanted to get him in. And then you have other options like Toni Kroos, who I did mention his injury earlier. He's going to be out. And Luka Modric, it was kind of a toss-up between him and Goretzka for that midfield spot in my team. And in the end, I did go for Goretzka just because I do back Bayern to go through further in the tournament. And also, I just prefer Goretzka as an asset. I think he has more to his game, at least in the confines of UCL Fantasy. But Modric is still a very good option, one of the highest scoring midfielders in the entire game. And in terms of strikers, I'll be honest, I didn't really have too much doubt about just getting Neymar. I know doubling up on PSG attack, I've already got a Bayern defender, and I've got already a PSG player on top of Mbappe. It kind of... it does seem a bit weird, you know, having free PSG and free Bayern, but it is what it is. And hopefully I do cover enough of the points that are on offer in those games. But yeah, the captaincy I think is a bit more complicated this time around. You have few opportunities and they're not quite as obvious. You don't really have Haaland as a standout or Lewandowski. So maybe it's going to be a bit more interesting now in terms of the captaincy. And yeah, in terms of more updates on stuff that's happened across Europe, Edison and he kept another clean sheet against Leicester. You've got John Stones and Cancelo. If you have them, they should be starting this game because they were rested in that game that I just mentioned. Gundogan's another one, and Foden. So you would expect all of them to start. Hopefully Pep does us nicely once again in UCL Fantasy. And yeah, you look at Phillips, Kabak, Trent Alexander-Arnold and Robertson. That should be the stable back four for Liverpool. They finally found that, and I think they could do very well. And I actually do think Liverpool could reach the final. Will they win it? Not so sure, but they have it in them to even win the whole competition, of course. We'll have to wait and see. And Jota, as I mentioned before, scored 2 goals. Haaland, yeah, well, Dortmund were very disappointing. They actually lost at the weekend. Now, the interesting thing is, obviously, I did bring in Neymar, but he got sent off towards the end of the game in a 1-0 loss to Lille, and Lille are now 3 points clear of Ligue 1. So that's very interesting. Mbappe, obviously, featuring in that game too, and Marquinhos. So, yeah, overall, a bit mixed bag in terms of what's happened for some of the clubs that I have. And maybe one thing you lot will be talking about is where's the Porto coverage, where's the Real Madrid coverage. There are certain teams that I just don't have really any coverage of, but to be honest, I am happy with this little balance I have. I do have 4 Manchester City, that is maybe a bit imbalanced, but you look at the rest, you've got 3 PSG, 3 Bayern Munich, 2 Liverpool, 2 Dortmund, so on the whole, pretty happy, and yeah, 1 Chelsea. And I was actually considering doubling up on Chelsea defence, so having Rudiger and Azpilicueta. And I wouldn't say that the West Brom game kind of changed my entire thinking about Chelsea. I still think they're worth doubling up on in their defence. But just the way I saw Liverpool play against Arsenal, I really liked their performance. I know Arsenal were terrible, but Liverpool were very, very good. And recently they have quietly been going about their business and improving. So that's why I ended up going with Phillips, which may sound a bit weird, but I do back him to be a very good differential. And if you look at his ownership, I mean 0% ownership, which is pretty incredible for a Liverpool defender who can get a lot of ball recovery points. I think Kabak is 1% owned, so keep an eye on those sort of players. In terms of other players to kind of think about, let's have a look. I don't want to be too long on this, but Mo Salah, of course, is always an option. But we'll go through the forwards first. Yeah, it'd probably have to be Benzema. Other than the 3 that I have on screen with Giroud and Werner, there's a lot of rotation in that Chelsea attack, and also not clinical or consistent enough. Lewandowski would have obviously been a no-brainer, but he is not there. If you want a bit of a differential and you're kind of backing the underdog, I think a Marega or a Taremi could be very good for Porto. When you look at Manchester City, though, it could be De Bruyne as the false 9 or Gundogan. They can kind of change things around. They don't need Gabriel Jesus, and if he does play, he might play as a left winger. And against Leicester, you kind of saw it. At one point, they were basically alternating their left winger and the right winger when Sterling came on, and also their striker, so they kept switching positions. They're a very dynamic team. Maybe in Lewandowski's absence, you can go for Choupo-Moting. That might seem a bit obvious, but also he used to play for PSG. He might have that little streak against his old club. You never know. So So those are the sort of strikers I would recommend. I wouldn't recommend Firmino, not Aguero. I don't think he's quite at it anymore, and I don't really expect him to start anyway. So those are the sort of forwards I would look at other than my team. And in terms of midfield, when Sergio Oliveira is back from suspension, definitely one to look out for. Salah, as I mentioned before, Modric, and they are the highest scoring midfielders for a reason. Sadio Mane, he's been doing pretty well. He scored in both games against Leipzig, so definitely someone to look out for. But when you look at how he's doing in the league, he's just not doing the business, is he? But in the Champions League, he's been doing all right. And Casemiro, for those ball recoveries, definitely an option. And other than that, Jorginho is on penalties, but I'm not entirely sure about him. So I just kind of stick to the ones I said. And another one to look out for is still Emre Can, but that's mainly for ball recoveries. And I do expect Dortmund will get knocked out. So not too keen on him, I'll be honest. And as you can see, Toni Kroos is injured. So yeah, those are the midfielders I'd be looking at. I wouldn't look elsewhere really. Maybe if you want ball recoveries, actually there is Fabinho, who actually put in a man of the match performance against Arsenal, and in his last game against Leipzig got 9 points, so maybe he's someone to look out for if you want someone very cheap. So those are the midfielders I would recommend, other than the ones obviously that I have. And in defence, let's have a look. So yeah, you've got Trent Alexander-Arnold, Robertson. I'd definitely go for them. Cancelo. However, one thing to note with Cancelo is he's 1 yellow card away from suspension in the Champions League. So keep an eye on that. I think he's going to start in this game based on him being benched against Leicester City, but he's 1 yellow card away from suspension in the Champions League. Bear that in mind, although there might be a stage where that gets reset. I'm not entirely sure about that. From Porto, it'd have to be Sanusi, definitely for the ball recoveries. He's the joint highest scoring defender in the game. Even Mbemba's a decent option. I would kind of steer clear from Dortmund defence. I would expect City to score in both games. If not, just to go through anyway. So I wouldn't really look at Hummels as I normally would. And yeah, Ruben Dias, Stones, even Zinchenko as a cheap City option. I think they're all good. Ferland Mendy, I think, would be the one I recommend the most from Real Madrid. Even if Sergio Ramos was available, he's too expensive. But Ferland Mendy has that attacking potential too, so I'd go for him. And then yeah, Kabak and Phillips, I think they're good options too. From Bayern Munich, I'll be honest, it's just Pavard and Kimmich. I wouldn't really look elsewhere. And from PSG, it's really Marquinhos, the one that I'm looking at, because he's got those goals. He gets forward quite a lot. He's got those ball recoveries, and he's just a class player. He's one of PSG's best players. So those are the sort of players I'd recommend in defence. And then from Chelsea, yeah, Azpilicueta, Rudiger, definitely I'd look at those sort of players. But other than that, yeah, I wouldn't really kind of recommend too many else. I wouldn't recommend, maybe there's Varane you could go for. But yeah, I'd try to stick to those pool of players I just mentioned. And in terms of keepers, I think this is a bit simpler. You've got Ederson, who is kind of a set and forget for the rest of the competition if you do back Manchester City to go all the way. Mendy as well, he's the highest scoring keeper in the game. I think he can continue with that clean sheet streak. Keylor Navas, he does have those saves in him, but I think the two top scoring goalkeepers are the best ones, Ederson and Mendy. And if I had enough money, I'd have both of them in. But Alisson, I mean, I mentioned the defenders. I think Alisson's still a good option. Neuer actually gets quite a lot of saves, but I would probably steer clear of him because he just doesn't get enough clean sheets like Ederson does, for example. And if they do go through against PSG, which is probably going to be tough anyway, they've got Manchester City waiting around the corner. So Ederson, Mendy, Marchesín will be good so long as he stays in the competition. He's been very, very good this season. And then, yeah, I'd probably say Keylor Navas or Alisson. I wouldn't really look elsewhere in terms of goalkeepers. So hopefully that kind of gave you a roundup of what's been happening across Europe. Some of the best players you can look at, not only my team, but also other options in every single position. And also the captaincy. All of that is covered, and I'll be aiming to do a deadline stream. I'll let you guys know if I'm able to do that on the Tuesday, 1 hour before the deadline, so stay tuned for that. And if you have any questions, any comments to make, then let me know down in the comments section below. And if you enjoyed this video, smash the like button and subscribe if you're new around here, and share this video around with anyone who loves UCL Fantasy or FPL, because I also do videos on that. And as I said before, I'm going to be covering Game Week 31 in detail, and I'll be doing live streams for that too. So thank you for watching. I really appreciate it, and hope to see you in the next few videos and live streams. So really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.